Our story, a chilling exploration of the genesis of unimaginable horror, begins not on the battlefield amidst the clash of steel and the thunder of cannons, but in the shadowy, gaslit streets of early 20th century Vienna, a city teeming with artistic ambition and simmering social unrest. A melting pot of cultures and ideologies, Vienna was also a breeding ground for radical ideas. Here, a young Adolf Hitler, a struggling and ultimately failed artist, wandered aimlessly, adrift in a sea of uncertainty and in search of purpose, a direction for his life. He was a man haunted by rejection, seeking solace and validation. He immersed himself in fringe literature, delving into obscure texts and forgotten lore, drawn to the seductive allure of hidden powers, secret societies, and forbidden knowledge. He sought answers in the shadows, hoping to unlock the mysteries of the universe and his own destiny. The writings of figures like Guido von List and Jörg Lanz von Liebenfels, with their bizarre blend of mystical ariosophy and pseudo-scientific racial theories, profoundly captivated him, offering a framework for his growing discontent. They spoke of a lost Aryan golden age, a mythical past of racial purity and cultural supremacy, tragically corrupted by insidious outsiders. A seductive narrative that offered Hitler both a grand revelation and a convenient scapegoat for all the world's ills. These dangerous beliefs, once absorbed, quickly became his all-consuming obsession, transforming ancient symbols like the swastika, originally a symbol of good fortune, and obscure runes into potent tools for a coming spiritual war, a battle for the soul of humanity. For Hitler, fueled by these esoteric interpretations, the world was no longer a place of diverse cultures and shared humanity, but a cosmic struggle. An epic battle between the forces of Aryan light and the encroaching darkness of supposed inferior races. This twisted mythology, steeped in paranoia and racial hatred, fermented within him, slowly but surely shaping a distorted worldview that was both dangerously simplistic in its black and white morality and disturbingly compelling to those seeking easy answers. He no longer saw himself as a mere failed artist, a nobody struggling to make his mark, but as a chosen initiate, a messianic figure with a sacred mission to fulfill, a destiny to reshape the world in his own warped image. The seemingly improbable path from Vienna's dimly lit occult bookshops, filled with whispers of forgotten gods and racial supremacy, to the imposing halls of Berlin's chancellery, was paved with these very convictions, these poisonous seeds of hate. The devastating political movement he would ultimately lead, a force that would plunge the world into unimaginable darkness, was built not on reason or progress, but on a shaky foundation of dark fantasy, dangerous myth, and the manipulation of ancient symbols. Hitler's self-proclaimed destiny, the driving force behind his actions, was nothing less than to restore a lost mythical kingdom on Earth, a twisted vision of a racially pure utopia. The seeds of terror, the roots of genocide, were sown long before the first shot was fired, germinating in the fertile ground of ignorance and hate. To legitimize their mythology, the Nazis needed more than just fiery rhetoric and impassioned speeches. They understood the power of perceived truth, the weight of historical precedent, even if that precedent had to be manufactured. They needed evidence, something tangible, to point to. And so, in 1935, the Ahnenerbe was born. Officially, it was the SS's so-called Ancestral Heritage Institute, a research organization dedicated to exploring Germany's past. But its true purpose ran far deeper and was far more sinister. It wasn't about uncovering history, but about creating it. The Ahnenerbe's mission was to prove Nazi racial theories, to provide a pseudo-scientific basis for their hateful ideology, and to justify their territorial ambitions on the world stage. Under Himmler's enthusiastic patronage, the Ahnenerbe rapidly grew, becoming a sprawling, well-funded machine. It was a bizarre blend of real scholars, desperate for resources and recognition, mixed with occult enthusiasts, charlatans, and true believers in the Nazi cause. Their mission was clear: rewrite history to fit Nazi ideology. It didn't matter how much existing evidence they had to distort, ignore, suppress, or outright invent. The narrative was paramount. Departments within the Ahnenerbe studied everything from ancient runes and their supposed magical powers to the mythical lost city of Atlantis, searching for evidence of a superior Aryan race. They engaged in racial pseudoscience, meticulously measuring skulls and embarking on expeditions to far-flung corners of the globe, all in the service of inventing Aryan connections to ancient lands and civilizations. Every discovery was carefully crafted propaganda, not genuine scientific inquiry. It was a grand, coordinated effort to construct a mythological foundation upon which they could build their empire of terror. Before the tanks rolled in and the bombs began to fall, the Ahnenerbe was already at work, laying the ideological groundwork and preparing the German population for conquest. They meticulously constructed a phantom history, a distorted version of the past designed to justify their planned invasion, their brutal occupation, and ultimately their horrific acts of genocide. The story of the Ahnenerbe serves as a chilling lesson, a stark reminder of how easily scholarship, research, and even the pursuit of knowledge can be twisted and weaponized to serve the darkest impulses of hate and destruction. The Ahnenerbe, driven by Himmler's fervent belief in a fabricated Aryan history, embarked on a global quest, their mission to unearth tangible evidence supporting the Nazi ideology. This led to the launching of bizarre and often dangerous expeditions to the far corners of the Earth, all in search of mythical ancestors and the supposed origins of the Aryan race. These weren't mere explorations, they were ideological treasure hunts. They scoured Scandinavia, believing the rugged landscapes held clues to their Viking heritage, a group they considered a pure Aryan stock. The Middle East, with its ancient civilizations, became another target, as they sought to connect Aryan roots to the cradle of civilization. And the Caucasus, a region of diverse cultures and ancient history, was explored with a disturbing blend of genuine exploration and pseudo-scientific racial theories. They were attempting to force-fit history to their twisted worldview. The most infamous mission, the 1938 SS expedition to Tibet, a remote and mysterious land, was led by the zoologist and SS officer Ernst Schaefer. Ostensibly a scientific endeavor, its secret and sinister goal was to find living links to the original Aryans, a pure race they believed had migrated to Tibet. Schaefer's team meticulously measured skulls, engaging in now discredited anthropological practices to try and prove their racial theories. They closely studied rituals, observing and documenting Tibetan religious practices, hoping to find echoes of ancient Aryan traditions. And they collected artifacts, amassing a vast collection of Tibetan cultural items, all in a desperate attempt to prove the validity of Nazi racial myths. Tibetan authorities, largely unaware of the true insidious motives behind the expedition, extended their hospitality and welcomed them. The expedition eventually returned to Germany with thousands of items which were then spun as propaganda to support the narrative of a global Aryan heritage. These missions were far more than just acts of folly or misguided exploration. They served to reinforce the dangerous idea of the Nazis as the rightful inheritors of a sacred and superior legacy. The carefully crafted image of heroic German explorers uncovering long-lost secrets became an incredibly powerful and effective tool for Nazi propaganda, both domestically and internationally. In reality, the seemingly innocent hunt for a mythical past was, in fact, a desperate hunt for justification, fuel for a future they intended to build on the foundations of racial purity, forced eugenics, and global domination. The seemingly academic and mythic quest ultimately masked a brutal and genocidal agenda, one that would lead to unimaginable suffering and destruction. In Westphalia, Germany, stands Wewelsburg Castle, transformed by Himmler into the SS's spiritual center. Himmler envisioned it as a Nordic Vatican, a monastery for his elite steeped in occult symbolism. The North Tower became the center of the world, with a crypt for SS rituals and a sunwheel mosaic, the Black Sun above. Annual ceremonies, burning of coats of arms, and the collection of death's head rings were planned to create a new mystical aristocracy. Renovations used concentration camp labor, adding horror to the castle's legacy. Wewelsburg became a chilling monument to the fusion of Nazi power and twisted mythology. Here the SS sought to become the high priests of a new dark religion. Hitler and his circle were obsessed with relics they believed held supernatural power. Chief among them, the Spear of Destiny, said to control the fate of empires. Hitler, entranced by the spear in Vienna, seized it after annexing Austria, convinced it would secure his rule. The Nazis also hunted the Holy Grail, symbolizing purity and eternal life, cornerstones of SS ideology. Otto Rahn's fruitless Grail quests show how seriously the Nazis pursued these myths. This fusion of modern warfare and archaic superstition reveals the irrationality at Nazism's core. They sought not just military victory, but the mythic levers of destiny itself. Nazi occult beliefs weren't just private obsessions. They were tools for mass manipulation. Goebbels understood that myth could move a nation more than fact. Nazi rallies became quasi-religious ceremonies, overwhelming the senses and forging a spiritual bond with Hitler. Speer's Cathedral of Light, swastika banners and torchlit parades transformed politics into a holy crusade. Symbols like the swastika and SS runes became weapons, imbuing the regime with an aura of ancient power. The Nazis framed their goals as a sacred mission, making conquest and genocide feel like destiny. This mystical manipulation hypnotized a nation, turning political aims into a mythic quest. The result, a people swept up in a drama of fate, blind to the horror ahead. Nazi mysticism wasn't mere decoration, it was the engine of atrocity. The myth of Aryan supremacy justified genocide as a holy war for humanity's soul. Victims were dehumanized, cast as subhumans, threatening Aryan purity. Pseudoscience from the Ahnenerbe gave these myths a veneer of authority, enabling ordinary people to condone brutality. The Holocaust became a ritual cleansing, framed as a noble act in Nazi eyes. SS rituals and symbols reinforced their self-image as holy warriors. The gas chambers were the endpoint of a mythology that began in Vienna's occult circles. The lesson myth, when weaponized, can turn fantasy into a blueprint for hell. The fall of the Third Reich didn't kill its occult myths, they retreated into the shadows, mutating over time. Conspiracy theories of Nazi UFOs, Antarctic bases, and Hitler's survival became modern legends. Books like The Morning of the Magician sensationalized Nazi occultism, blending fact and fiction. These myths found new life among neo-Nazis who used symbols like the Black Sun to claim a mystical legacy. Fantastical narratives proved hard to kill, offering simple answers and a sense of belonging to fringe groups. The persistence of Nazi mysticism is a warning. Pseudo-history can sustain hate long after its creators are gone. The dark dreams of the Third Reich continue to haunt the present. Myth, once unleashed, is hard to bury. Nazi occultism didn't stay in the shadows, it became a pop culture archetype. Films like Indiana Jones and games like Wolfenstein turned Nazi relic hunters into iconic villains. These stories draw from real Nazi obsessions, transforming them into thrilling entertainment. But this comes with risk. It can romanticize or trivialize real horrors, turning symbols of genocide into mere props. The enduring presence of Nazi mysticism in culture is a double-edged sword. It keeps the memory of evil alive, but risks sanitizing it. Hitler's occult obsession is more than a tale of secret societies. It's a warning about the seductive power of myth. When fantasy fuels hate, the shadows can last for generations.